right, good evening, sports fans and followers everywhere. I'm Gary Graves. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. And I want to throw it to my esteemed colleague and good friend, John Webster. John, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, Gary, I'm doing really great, man. Had another great week of sports, man. Football all over the place. I was happy as a pig in slop, man. Watching college football, watching pro football. It was beautiful, man. But I tell you what, as we always say, man, I would be remiss if we didn't say hi to our producer, Mr. John Pitt.
Greetings, gentlemen.
Man, it makes it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited. We got a special guest today.
Man, how about that? How about that? Gary, you want to go ahead and introduce our special guest?
Well, for those of you that remember the Washington Redskins, now called the Washington football team, remember those glory years of not too long ago? Well, maybe kind of long ago now, but on Tony McGee. That, of course, Tony McGee had nothing to do with the current state. He helped set the standard for the Washington football team. Tony, welcome to the program. And first of all, welcome to the program because you helped bring a sense of history even before Washington. And we're going to get into that in a moment.
Thank you for having me. And, it's just great to be here. And this is the only way I get to talk to John. He only talked to me every 20 years when we maybe on television or something. And we were good friends, too. John, we have to talk after the show. What happened, man?
I can't wait, man. Always enjoy the conversations with you. And, man, I tell you, I've been talking, your ears should have been burning, Tony. I've been talking about you and having you on the show. I'm just, like I said, I'm excited, man. You got so much to tell, so much to share. But, I want to start not with the Redskins or the Washington football team. I want to go back to when you were playing at Wyoming. I want to talk about you as a trailblazer, some of the great things you did there. And you can talk a little bit about something called the Black 14 and the difference that you all made.
The Black 14 was something that we didn't let it define us, but something happened in 1969. And what it was, when you go to the University of Wyoming, the veterans would tell you things like, whenever you play BYU, you have to watch your back. They would call us out our names. They call us everything. They hit us and stuff. Our coaches and the other players would act as if they didn't see anything happen. They would give us a speech when we got off the bus. You cannot go in the temple of the Latter-day Saints. You can't do this, stay close and everything. Whenever we walked off the field, they turned the sprinklers on. I can remember the last game I played against them. A guy hit me in my leg, and I went up to tell the official. He told me to shut up and play ball. So we wanted to let individuals know what was going on. At the same time, the Black Student Alliance wanted to protest BYU because they said the black man can never rise to the higher echelon of man. They tried to get us in because at that time, guys, we were 4-0. The Sugar Bowl had just told us that if we won 2 more games, we'd be in the Sugar Bowl. So they wanted us to come to the meeting. We went to the meeting. We weren't going to protest because that was against the team rules. They didn't even have the rule, but we knew our coach would not let us. So they asked us, would you wear black armbands in the game? So we went back to the dorm. We talked to all the individuals married and told them, you don't have to do this. We're going to see can we pull this off. Not that we were going to do it until we talked to the coach. They said we're going to do it. So we went over to talk to the coach. When we got over there, he made us stand out there in the hall for 10 minutes. Then he put us in the stand. And he said, as of this moment, you're no longer a member of the Wyoming football team. He said, now y'all can go back to your home. You don't even know who your parents. Most of you come from broken homes. You don't know who your daddies are. He said, Tony McGee, I'll pick you up off the streets of Battlefield picking up cigarette butts. I didn't even smoke then, but at the same time, that's what he told. He said, going back to the Gramblin's and those kind of schools, that's where you belong. This is our coach, who we thought that was behind us. So the bad thing about it, whenever you look into the Black 14, we have a website now, black14.net. One thing we were punished for was something that never happened. That was protesting. We got the black armbands. They put us off. We got death threats. But one thing that the Black Student Alliance didn't do that made it worthwhile, they told us they had schools for us to go to. John, you know what sacks are. All of you guys know. In 4 games, I had 11 sacks. I had 7 against the Air Force. schools should have been after me. They blackballed us. The only school that went after me was Bishop College, Dallas, Texas. I went down there for a year, and that's why I'm sitting here talking to you now. There's a lot of stuff going on right now with the 50th year. They're trying to make a movie. We've been doing a lot of good things. We've been giving food and stuff, but that is part of my life that really defined where I am now.
Man, I tell you, and I myself, and I'm quite sure Gary and John as well, have a lot of respect for what you all went through and how you persevered and got through it. I know when you went to Bishop, you also went to the NFL. If I'm not mistaken, you were a third-round pick. And part of the reason why you became a third-round pick as opposed to a first-round pick is because some of the falsehoods that were passed about you in regards to the Wyoming situation and what Coach, what's his name, Lloyd Eaton had said about you.
Yeah. And you know, the thing about it was they called it, we were all in, it used to be a game, and you look it up in the history, it was called the Chicago Tribute Game, and that was supposed to be the best 48 players or 50 players in the country. Here I am, Little Bishop College. I had played 9 games, but I had 109 tackles in those games. So they were looking at me as a pretty good player. We went to this all-star game, and it was after practice one day, and the Chicago scout came up. He said, man, I'm glad we got it. He said, just keep your nose clean, and you'll have a good time in this league. He said, but let me tell you, you fell to third because we called, I hate to say it, we called Wyoming, and they told us that you were the main troublemaker. Now, when they didn't take me, they took Jack Youngblood. Now, listen to the name, Jack Youngblood, and I came at the same time. He couldn't run out of sight in a week. I could run out. I ran a 4.5 We both went into play 14 years. He missed one game. I missed one game. I had 106 sacks, and he probably an 80 or 90. He's in the Hall of Fame. I got nominated. I didn't even get close to it. Matter of fact, I didn't even get to sweep up the trash after they celebrated for him. But what I'm saying is our careers were so much similar. He went on to be Hall of Fame. But you know what? I get to tell my story now.
That's a good thing, man. That's a good thing. Well, like I said, I wanted to give you an opportunity to say some things about the Black 14 because they are part of history, and a lot of things that you all stood for, you've helped others persevere as they came behind you. And as you move forward, you went into the NFL and you started playing with the Chicago Bears.
It was very interesting there. We had a very good team. But at the same time, we had a quarterback where they had to blow a foghorn for him to know when to call audible. So we weren't very good. But I played with the likes of Gale Sayers. His soul, rest in peace. He passed this year. I played with Dick Buckles. Tell you a real quick story about the Chicago Bears. We were playing the Detroit Lions and the week before. That was when you heard this name, Fred Hughes. You look it up. I think that it was Fred Hughes. He was a player that died on the field. A Lions receiver. And the next week, a guy had been playing it for me, and I was playing in that game, my first game really getting a chance to play. And the next week, we were playing this team out of Washington Redskins. And we were playing the game, and the guy in front of me got hurt. And when he got hurt, the defensive coordinator called in another guy. Dick Bucket stopped the game and told him to put me in. Well, the game was almost over. They were driving down. Sonny Jurgensen was driving on it. We couldn't stop them, and they needed about 10 more yards to get down there. And they tried to throw the ball. I knocked it down. The guy came in, Kirk Knight, missed the field goal. And Chicago's paper the next day said, "Good night, McGee saved game." And that's how my career got started. I always tell Big Buckets did it. They weren't even going to play me. Matter of fact, my coach told me, and this is no joke, right before the game, I'm all excited and everything. He said, "You see that band on the field?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "They'll play before you." And he wasn't lying.
Man, oh man. Gary, this is an impressive guy, isn't it? What do you think?
Yeah. I'm just absorbing all these stories. You know, the thing, I mean, between hearing your personal recollection of that time and from seeing some of the documentaries on it, and particularly this week with I've been watching the Muhammad Ali docuseries on PBS. That I'm always curious when you go through those kind of things during that period, the maybe fear? Was there any, what kind of fear, what kind of anger, just exactly what were your emotions then in having to go through all that? And did you ever see a moment where there would be did you ever see a bright spot? I guess that's the best way to say it.
Well, I never looked at it the way as everyone else did, because you look back in the annals of time, my father at that time was one of the leading civil rights workers, Deuce in Michigan. And at the same time, I had seen social injustice as a 13-year-old when I walked out of a show with my sister and brother, a brother-in-law, and we were young kids, and they had said some African Americans had been acting up. I was 13 years old. And a police car drove up and said, you get in the car. We weren't even the people they were looking for. And my brother-in-law said, what happened? The next day he was on the ground and they kicked him in the back. They hit my sister, and I'm 13. So me and this guy fight. He hit me so hard, I had to go to the hospital. But at the same time, this is what happened that really turned me around. When they got us to the police station, they put us in separate rooms. They made me stand up and face a wall for an hour. Then 3 policemen came in, 2 held me, and 1 nubbed his fingers in my eyes. Right then, that's when I grew up knowing what the social justice is about. So I wasn't as shocked as everyone else was. But at the same time, yes, I looked at it, and I always give my mother credit. After they put us off the team, we didn't have anywhere to go. And they tried to sign me in Canada. And she said, don't sign that contract. Better things are going to happen to you. And you know, your mama always knows best. I tell her right now, you still know more than me. And I tell you what, that defined my life and this social injustice. But other guys, it made guys do better, but it also took a lot of things from me. Because one of my guys, I had him on a television show, and he was saying that he told his father did not even drink, but they lived in a small town. And because people found it out, they was getting on them and everything. His father started drinking so much that he died. So he felt like the Black 14 killed his father. So, you know, these are the kind of stories. We had another guy who was one of the best cornerbacks in the country. He ended up in prison. But then on the other side of the ledger, we got another guy that was an executive in the airline. We had another one that helped form Lexus, the cars and everything over here in America. We have guys that were successful. So the one thing I can say about that, it was a shock. We didn't think it was going to get better, but we did not let it define us.
How do you resist not having any kind of bitterness or anger? And John and I, we have conversations. I have conversations with other friends, and we talk about how things are today. And we're on a show called The Daily Deuce, but if you're Black in this country, you have to deal with what we call the daily indignity. And how in the world have you been able to really avoid any kind of bitterness and anger, even today, especially when you see a climate within sports, the animosity toward Colin Kaepernick in particular? I mean, what really sustains you now?
I was angry, and I was angry. I didn't talk about it. A lot of people did not know I went to the University of Wyoming to all these specials in the last couple of years have been happening. I didn't tell my friends about it, no one. I did not want to give Wyoming the credit for me being in the NFL. I did not want to give Wyoming the credit for me being a football player. I said Bishop College is where I came from. That's where I played. That's how I got into the pros. But no, I was very bitter because the way it was done. And as I said, 2 days before I left, I had got a scholarship to another player. 2 days before I left, my roommate got a call and they said, we're going to get Tony McGee. Well, Bishop College had given me a scholarship then. 2 days later, they had a guy on top of a building with a high-powered rifle. So you think you wouldn't be angry about that? That's how we did have a few people in Wyoming that was for us, but it was dangerous and it was unfair. And this coach, they even made up rules. I'm telling you, we're going through this right now. Matter of fact, we have a meeting coming up this week with lawyers and stuff pertaining to some other stuff that happened way back then. This thing, now you're getting more truth out of it. So the anger, it was anger then. I hid it. So I'm not going to say I wasn't angry. I was very angry. But right now, I got a whole different perspective of it.
I mean, one thing, we give you credit for is for persevering through all this. And I mean, look at where you are. I mean, I'm just kind of looking at your bookshelf. I see, you know, a man of knowledge. I mean, you've had success on the field. You've had success off the field. How much vindication is that for you, that in spite of everything, you are where you are?
One thing we used to say, my sister, and I give you a quick synopsis, where she went to the University of Michigan, and she was one of the first African-American chief pharmacists in the United States. And then she became director of ancillary care for the University of Michigan. It was just two of us. One thing, whenever we did good things and everything, my father would he'd give us all praise, but he said, that's what you're supposed to do. I've been blessed. I've been blessed to do a lot of things that people haven't been able to do. And it's because of my parents and because of that situation. I didn't know anything about television. I'm going into my 37th year of owning a show. Me and my wife owned a physical therapy clinic for 14 years, and we sold it to Health South. It's just been things. I've been married to my wife. I've been knowing her for 48 years. I mean, I've tried to be longevity and be right in whatever I do. And I tell you what, and I've been blessed, and I'm not no fool not to know that. It ain't because I had ability, and it's not because I was so good or so smart. Them books up there, hey, that ain't have nothing to do. The life thing is what I've tried to go with. And the one thing I try to do is when I leave here, I don't want nobody to say that I did them wrong. I try to do right, and I know that what is right is always not easy.
Well, Tony, I'll tell you, we owe you a debt of gratitude. I think any player in the NFL now, heck, anybody in life that knows about your story owes you a debt of gratitude for what you and your teammates went through, what you endured in the National Football League. And I'm a true believer that you will get your due in Canton at some point.
You know, and that used to be important to me. But now what's really important is what the Jesus the Latter-day Saints are doing. They're right here in a pandemic. And as I said, we've sent out 9 to 12 trucks in a year with 40 tons of non-perishable food. I'm setting up 5 trucks as we speak. And the thing about it is, University of Wyoming haven't done that, but here we're feeding people. So I got to take it out of my mind what you did about me being Black years ago. And the reason we know that it was kind of a success, the very next year they had their first African-American football player. So right there, we had won the game. The game was won right there, no matter what happened to the 14, which a lot of good things, one of them turned into the best broadcaster in Chicago and Detroit. So we had some success, but the success was the next year, they had their first Black player with Brigham Young. So right there, we had won the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's powerful. That's powerful, Tony. Gary, we got a powerful guy with us today, man. Powerful.
Tony, now, you know, you said so much in a little bit of time. You know that you can't just do this one time. You have to come back and tell us some more, because, you know, I'm a history buff. That's one reason why I became a sports writer, because I just love history, and particularly as I get older and look back on the civil rights era and even before that, again, you know, like the stories about Jackie Robinson and Althea Gibson, and you know, and of course Ali, you know, that I'm watching this week. I'm a believer that to understand where you are, you have to understand where you've been as a people. And I mean, your story, I'm glad it finally got out there. And I really want to thank you, you know, for the sacrifices that you've made toward that end, you know, for a lot of young men who probably don't even know what you've done.
You know, and I thank you very much for thanking me. And I thank John and you guys and both Johns for helping me on. But really, I don't have to have thank you, because when I see that food going out now, and when I see young people coming up, we went to the University of Wyoming for a 50-year reunion, and people coming off the street saying, hey, we know we weren't part of it, but we want to apologize for them. apology means a lot because, you're saying something from, they didn't have to say it. They're saying something from the heart. So what's important to me is you have to sometimes put stuff aside and look at the good of it. But you look at what's happening right now. We're working on the scholarship program for kids. We're feeding people. We've been talking on talks over in England, over in Germany. We've been talking to classes and on Zoom calls. So we look at the pandemic was bad, but it allowed us to even get out there even more. I'd have never been in Germany talking right now. I wouldn't have been in England. So when I look at my whole life, guys, I thank you guys for saying that. But I thank God because he put me in the right position at the right time. And he gave me the best parents that I could have. And he let me not be the knucklehead that I was at the same time when I was young. Yeah, I was one of them guys. I'll tell y'all a quick story. When we used to sit in class, they would start with a horseshoe. And they would have the smartest over there and the dumbest at the end. Where, I held that end seat for a while. Not because I couldn't do the work, but I was defiant. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be bad, because I'd have watched these things. And, it used to bore me that my father was into civil rights so tough. But at the same time, as I grew, I found out what he was talking about.
Man,
Let me tell you about Muhammad Ali quick. Do I have 2 minutes? Can I tell you something?
Go right ahead, Tony.
The floor is yours.
When I met Muhammad Ali after my father passed, my mother kept the civil rights thing. My father brought Dick Gregory to Battle Creek when he was just still a comedian then, but he was starting to be an activist. So then my mother brought Muhammad Ali and we all became friends and stuff and everything. Lo and behold, at the Pittsburgh Courier All-American for the Black school, he named each and every, now I'm there, me and him hugging, he boxing me and doing everything. He named all the players on the All-American team. And which name do you think he forgot? And somebody told him, but when I think about it, I always look at that, but he was such a genuine guy. When you guys mention his name, a lot of people think about him being in pugilistics and boxing and being a show-off. But that guy was one of the first guys as an athlete that I saw that knew how to speak. Mm-hmm. That guy was one of the first guys I saw had the charisma. And then one time they asked him, they said, well, Muhammad Ali, you're not as educated as people, not this. He said, I'll bring everybody out, kings, queens, whatever. I'll bring them into the ring with me. And that's what I try to do with people. I want everybody to know you can come into the ring with me. And you know what? I'm going to give it out to you. And the one thing about it is I don't want to be different just because I'm a football player. I did this. I want to be different because I tried to be a good human being.
I hear you, man.
That will be your legacy too. That will be, no matter what you did on the field, the kind of things that you do to reach out to people and help others in the community, feeding them. I mean, that will be your legacy. And we thank you for that.
I want to ask you guys something quick. And John, both of you, I want to have y'all, when I have my Black 14 show, I'd like for y'all guys to be on there with me.
Sure.
Hey,
absolutely. I'm going to try to get JB to be the host of it. And he did a couple for me last year. And I do that in the body of my shows because you know what? And this ain't nothing but, it ain't no bragging or nothing. But you know what? I've had this show and I want to do Black 14. So we don't talk all football, and that's why it's Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus. We want to talk about everything. Last week, we just broke into a talk about not getting shots, and that's what I like. So, you guys, I want you guys on there. And I appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to spread the word as well. And then I got a chance to speak to John, who had written me off the list, but I'm back on it now. So I'm feeling good, John. This is a win-win.
Hey, Tony,
I'm still trying to get a lunch out of him that he owes me, Tony.
Oh, really? You too? Maybe we can go together.
Well, before y'all break me, let me slide into another subject because, hey, Tony, let's talk. We talked about history. Let's talk a little bit more about the NFL. After Chicago, I think you went to a team up in Foxborough, New England, didn't you? Foxborough, Massachusetts.
I went up into New England. I tell you, when I went to New England, that's where I developed as a football player. And I always remember Hank Buehler. He just died, but his family is well known in Michigan State and different people. He took each and every one of a defensive lineman. He said, I want you to do your best move. And he watched that move. He said, now you take that move and you develop 3 other moves that look similar to it. And you always use that move as the one when you need the bread and butter. I had 106.5 sacks during my career. I can tell you, most of them came in the 4th quarter. And he taught me how to make a game plan. That's what I don't see on the field in the NFL now, is people making game plans. You don't just get up to pass rush. When I pass rush, the first thing I do is try to run by a guy, and that gets him to thinking right then. The next time I run by him and cross in. So then he said, okay, I know he's going to do one other. Cross in, hit, roll back out. That's 3 moves on him, and he don't know. So my 4th move is always my best one, but all of them start the same way. I don't see that now. So, you know, I look at being in New England, they taught me how to play football, because Chicago only taught me how to play hard. I learned how to play football in New England, and I learned how to be a Super Bowl champion in Washington.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Before we get to Washington, you played with quite a dynamite team in New England. I mean, there was a bookend on the other end of that defense named Sugar Bear Ray Hamilton, you know, and we're also going, since we're giving nicknames out, we're going to go ahead and give what Tony's is Mac the Sack, you know, so we're going to put that out there as well, too. And Tony, I got to ask you this question. I talked to John Pitt yesterday. Gary, I'm going to ask you a question, man. You know, there's history with Oakland and New England in the playoffs, right?
Yes.
You know about the tuck rule, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tough game, yep.
How about the 1976 game? You remember that one, Gary? Do you remember 1976? Oakland and New England? Was it roughing the passer, or was it a good play, Gary? Which is, I already know what Tony's going to say. What was it, Gary?
I think it was a good play.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, cancel Gary's ticket on my show. Don't even worry about it, Gary. You don't have to be live when we get off today either.
You know, I wanted to get that reaction out of you. I had to get a reaction out of you on that one.
Man.
You know what, though? You can't look at it like that. And, you know, the only thing about it, it was 2 or 3 plays prior to that we could have won, and they just happened to happen. Like on one of them, one of our running backs, we had we needed 10 yards, and he didn't know that, and he just ran out of bounds at 9. So we had 2nd and 1. The next thing, Villapiano, which was a linebacker up there, he held our tight end, and nobody even said anything about it. They showed it on film. Then somebody jumped offside, so then we had to punt. They got the ball back. We were holding them down, and they had 4th and 100. They threw that ball up in the air, and Ray hit the guy. The ball sailed way over the head, which right now they would say he didn't have opportunity to catch it anyway.
Catchable.
And they gave them the ball first down on the 1-yard line.
There's that play right there. There it is.
It is. Now, wait. If you see that play when he threw it, he hit under his arm. So how can that be roughing the pass? Usually when you're roughing the passer, you hit the head. Now watch the arm go up. And he hit, see it under the arm. So it couldn't have been. So, you know, they stole it from us, and it's something you never forget. But at the same time, it kind of defined where we would go from then on. Ray went on to be a coach in the NFL for 10 or 15 years. And I went on and had the opportunity to go to Super Bowl. But that team right there, and that's when that young man grew up. Oh, here, I'm crying. Why y'all show that?
Oh, Pitt, come on, man. Why you put that up there, Pitt?
You'd have broke a brother down. Nah, you know why I cried? Because we should have won that game. And things happen like that. But it also made us a much better team.
Yep.
And that team was so important because the year before we went there, we were like 3-11. And that year I think we went 11-3 or something, whatever we went. And we changed it. And we could have gone to Super Bowl. But you know what? That wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. But then I tell you what was meant to be. Let me tell you what was meant to be. 1982, they take a guy from New England, and he comes to Ashburn, Virginia to play for what was then the Washington Redskins. And man, I'm going to tell you something. I told Tony this before the show, Gary. I told my dad this. By signing Tony, that was the biggest move the Redskins made that year because it was similar to what the 49ers had did the year before when they brought in Fred Dean as a pass rushing specialist. And you know what happened? The 49ers won a Super Bowl because of that. And it was largely responsible because of Fred Dean. Tony coming to town had the same impact. And I kept reminding my father that all season long, that number 78 was going to be a difference maker, and he was. Total difference maker. And that team, the first year, the strike shortened year, 8-1, and I still, Tony, I watched it on TV. I know for you being there, RFK Stadium was shaking. It was shaking. It was unbelievable. They never shut up the whole game. It was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'd never been in an environment like that. We had a good environment in New England, but nothing similar to the way it was in Washington. And the other thing about it, you know, we also went through a strike that year. So we had a lot of things to fight off, and we had a really great year. And then we come back the next year. And, you know, John, I think a lot of people be embarrassed about what you just said about him. I'm saying, thank you. I enjoy people saying that, but at the same time, we were a team. And one thing about it, Coach Gibbs knew how to make a team put together. And the other thing he knew to make everybody on the team important. Everybody had an important job all the way down. I can always remember when we played the Raiders right before we went to them and they beat us in the Super Bowl. And it was a tie game. And they told Mike Nims, they said, hey, Nims, we need a big one. Do you know they kicked it to that brother and he went about 30 or 40 yards downfield on that and we scored on that run? That's the kind of stuff we look at. We looked at Art Monk got hurt right before the first Super Bowl we went to. And Alvin Garrett comes in and becomes a star nobody know about.
The fun bunch.
Just to be on the fun bunch, just to be on a team like that, that's something I had never experienced. And I tell you what, I played 14 years, and out of that 14 years, I only missed one game. But all those games I had in Washington, all those other games, they were just monumental in everything that my football career became.
Man, I tell you, it was exciting times. And I said earlier, Gary, I don't know what your thoughts are, Gary. That 83 team, if they beat Oakland in the Super Bowl, they are the team of the 80s, and it's not the 49ers.
Oh, I agree. I mean, you figure that, let's see, I'm trying to remember, Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls in something like 12 years, 11, 12 years. But that 83 team was probably his best to not win a Super Bowl. I mean, of course, the 91 team, I still look at that number, 11 sacks given up that whole season. That's incredible, in an age of Lawrence Taylor for them to do. But again, that one really hurt because I just thought, boy, if as good as you all were in 82 and winning in that strike shortened year, that you came back even stronger in 83. And I was just convinced it's like they're on the verge of a dynasty. Not that you all didn't establish one as it is.
Man, go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
No, it was. And I appreciate and thank you for saying that. And, it kind of really defined. And, John, you said it just right. Hey, we won that game. We would have been the team of the 80s. And I always have that, not argument, but discussion with individuals. And I always tell them that team was the better of the 2 Super Bowl teams. And that's one thing we had to do. We wanted to come back and prove that. Hey, we won that would have also been another feather in the hat. But what happened is I got to be thankful for that because I look at some of those guys like Gail Sherritt and Dick Buckers and people I played with, even down to OJ and all of them. None of them even had an opportunity to go to a Super Bowl. And here I am in my 13th year, in my 12th and 13th year, I'm going to 2 Super Bowls. That was just a blessing. And, that's one thing you'll hear me say that, and I'm not trying to transform anybody, anything, but I know from where my blessings have come, and I know that it isn't because of me, all these things have happened. I've been put in the right place because I was placed there. And what you have to do is what you're given, you have to take advantage of. And that's the way I feel with in life. You try to do that.
Well, I tell you what, those were the glory years. Gary, John, and Tony, it was a lot of fun watching the Washington team then. And now we come forward, Tony. Now we come all the way full circle. We've talked about the great times and how we sat home and watched you guys on Sundays. What do you have to say about the current state of the WFT?
Not just the WFT, of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Bad condition. They're not in shape.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're trying to preserve and they're trying to keep individuals from getting hurt. When we were playing training camp, 2-a-days, preseason, ended up 6 weeks of hitting. 6 games you played. You hit twice a day, every day. You didn't leave that place for 6 weeks. Now it's like going to a resort. You don't hit two or three times. Don't hit me too hard. You look on television when you're doing, John, when you're doing your report, John, you looking at it, and when you're writing. These guys are walking around in shorts and getting ready to play a game on the weekend. So as I look at this whole thing, it's just changed so much. And this Washington team right now, I keep hearing everyone saying how great their defensive line is. Do you know in '83, we had 3 guys on the line that had 10 or more sacks. The first one, number 1, was Dave Butts. He had 11 sacks. Dexter Manley, 10 and a half. And then an old guy, Tony McGee, had 10. Now think about that on one team. You got 3 guys with 30 sacks. Now they talking about this Washington team? Yes. The other day we finally saw a few Payne played very well. I like Chase, but Chase has got to do it every play, and that guy got the energy and everything. I like all of them, but right now, I just don't feel like the league is in shape. I feel like if you look at the game, look how many injuries there were this weekend. Look at how many individuals that you saw not performing the way they were last year or year before last. Look at the individuals that are not even in the league now that was there. It's changed over tremendously. And when I look at this Washington team, I like Heineke. I think he can do well. I like the number 1 wide receiver, but I don't think they have enough receivers. And I'm doing this on purpose, not saying names. But I don't think they have enough receivers. They have a young man that they feel is going to step in. You go to the offensive line, and they got an all-pro there, but he hasn't really played like that the way he should. And they got 4 other guys there that I think a couple of them, I'm thinking about going out there and seeing can I still get around them. I'll be driving, though. But then I look at their defensive line is supposed to be good. You look at the quarterbacks the way he's due. Running backs, I'm starting to like these new guys that's in there. I like what they're doing. But then the linebackers haven't really improved as much as I'd like to see it. But the other facet of the team that you see has really improved this year, and they're doing it game by game, is special teams. Think about the last 8 years, guys. We haven't seen special teams do anything since Brian Mitchell left. Now you're seeing these guys break them off. You see them covering. You see them making plays. That's what you have. For any team, it's 3 facets to the team: offense, defense, and special team. If you don't have good in all 3 of those, you can't win the big game. And I learned that without the game. And this Washington team right now, they're not there. What they may be there eventually, but at the same time, each individual and each line, each player, they have to look in the mirror and know that they're not doing the job that they can do.
Yeah. Tony, do you see the culture of this team changing at all? And by that, I mean, I think last year was a year where I saw guys more engaged and really trying to win. I mean, it wasn't reflected in their record, but it was reflected in some of the games that they won that they shouldn't have won. And in years past, they would often lose. And I look at last Thursday night's game as maybe a turning point in a sense in terms of their resilience, because again, that was a game not too long ago that they would have lost. And do you see the culture of this team kind of changing now, where the pride is starting to come back, that it's not about the big contract and the TV exposure and the endorsements, that it is about, hey, I can have all that and win games?
When Coach went for that win last year and they didn't get it, I saw it started to change then, because he went for it. He wanted them to know, we're not going to just settle for a tie. We're not going to settle. We're going for the win. I see this team now. I see improvement on them each and every week. I did talk about the facets as a individual, but as a whole, I can see a team that is starting to play together. Maybe they don't have the talent where they need it right now in some places, but I can see this team getting better. And I've seen it change the culture of it. Before, when I was a uniform inspector here and went down to Atlanta, these guys were more interested in how they looked and how they played. Mm-hmm. Now I'm starting to see these guys make plays. They're getting out there. They're in games. They have opportunities. Even if they want to say the game that they won on last week was not, they shouldn't have won it, it's no shouldn't have. And then at the end of the year, that'll be a W. So yes, I do see the culture changing. I see it going back to more discipline. But the one thing that I'm concerned with, not just with this team, around the league, ever since we had the pandemic, but even prior to that, they have not let these guys get into shape, and they haven't made these guys get into the shape that I thought they should be in. Collective bargaining got something to do with that. But at the same time, I'm not going to be one of those that say it was always good for us to beat each other up and practice and do that, all that. No, I'm paying the bill for that right now. But at the same time, they are not letting these guys get ready all around the league the way they have to be ready to perform at this high level.
I agree with you on that, because I think, if I were running the NFL, especially during this pandemic, that I think there should have been a focus more on making sure, if you're really looking after your players, if you're talking about protect the shield, you have to protect these players' health. And with a pandemic where they're not getting a chance to practice or even work out, that this was not the time personally to bring in a 17-game season. You might have cut a couple of preseason games off or whatever, but I don't think that you did your players any favors physically over the long term of their lives, not so much their careers, by adding another game. And I'm telling you, it's just like when it went from 14 games to 16 games. That was a big difference for a lot of players, but players like yourself, you adapted to it. And
Gary, did you freeze up there? Well, you made some good points there, Tony. And, the 17-game season, it is more wear and tear on the body now. It does put more pressure on those guys who are playing. So, we'll have to see how this is going to pan out this year. Let me ask you this, Gary. Can the Washington football team get 9 or 10 wins this year?
9 or 10 wins. Right at this point, I'm not going to say yes or no. It's a possibility, but I need to see a lot of change. And let's digress and go back to the 17, the game thing. They're playing the same amount of games. But the thing that has been altered was the starters didn't play much in preseason.
there we go.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And they didn't get that in preseason. Look at this team, and as they grow and know Coach Riviera, they have an opportunity. But we'll see, and it's all going to be dependent on not just their progress, but their luck. And hopefully the injuries don't overwhelm them. Because I would have liked to see them out there with the quarterback they had chose to start the season, but it didn't work that way. So, yes, I think this team will be better.
Well, I can tell you this, Tony. You made John Pitt's day because you said that the team from Texas is probably the best team in the East Division. So you done made his day right there. Gary, John Pitt's happy about that, right? Because
yeah. Well, and look, he's got a reason to feel good about his team because That was a gutty performance. And, I think the theme of last weekend in the NFL was resilience by a number of teams, Washington, Baltimore in particular, Sunday night. I mean, that was something. I mean, a lot of us, I think, had given up the Ravens for dead and turned over to the Emmys.
Yeah, I mean, they pulled it out. And what about that guy in Tampa? Is he really 44 years old? Is he really?
Yes. The only thing scary about that, John, is when you get that age, one lick and
it's over.
It don't take much.
And he needs to buy his offensive line Rolexes and Lexuses.
Yeah, because he one bad hit, it's going to be a long time for him getting out of bed on that next day after Sunday. A long
he
time.
He is the reason that Tampa Bay is doing what they're doing too.
He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable.
Have you guys seen the meme with there's a picture of Aaron Rodgers and Brady side by side, and I think it pointed out that like Brady is something like 7 years older than Rodgers, and it looks like 7 years younger.
Yeah, I tell you, it's amazing what he's done and what he's doing, and I hope it can continue because that's kind of liaison between us and the future of these players now. They get a chance to look at a guy that wasn't a starter at first. He became a starter. He kept his game together. He's keeping his game together now. And he's not just out there making money. He's making Super Bowls.
Yeah. I really need him to be back in New England, Tony. I really do. I'm really missing him up there right now.
Well, you know what? When I didn't have the honeymoon, when I got married, you know, my wife said, "Get over it." You need to get over that. They got a good young quarterback there. And one thing I like about it, John, I'm glad the coach knows now in New England it wasn't all just about him, because I think he really thought that. Yeah. It was about him and Brady together, and Brady has shown him that I didn't need you there either.
Yeah. I've had a lot of sorrowful, crying nights over that, Tony. So yes, you bring up a very good point. So
what do you mean you've had so? First of all, you are supposed to be a Washington fan. How are you agonizing over Brady up in New England?
Because I am very clear. I was always a big fan of Washington, but when there was a change made in 1999 in ownership, my opinions changed because of the direction of the football team. And I will be honest with you, one of the biggest mistakes I think was made with Washington, and one of the things that stuck in my mind, and Tony may disagree, when Snyder got here and he was going through different coaches, the biggest mistake he made was letting Marty Schottenheimer go. Mm-hmm. And that right there, because Schottenheimer may not have got you to a Super Bowl, but they would need to get to the playoffs. And I can't find words, Tony, to say, you know, it's just, they just made some, you wanted a football coach. You had a football coach. Mm-hmm. He got the job done. They started 0-5. Does that sound familiar, Tony McGee? They started 0-5.
Sounds like 1981, right?
Yeah, and ended up 8-8. And he had a quarterback that had one audible, and it was Tony Banks. And the backup was Kent Graham. He kicked Jeff George off the team at the beginning of the season.
Well,
they were turning the corner. They were turning. They were going to be very, very good the next year. He proved that when he went to San Diego and turned that around. Everywhere Schottenheimer went, he won. Everywhere he went, they won. And that just changed my thought patterns. And I ended up going up the street for a while. You know, I'm up in Foxborough, man. I'm up there. I'm looking for Tony McGee's old jersey. That's where I am right now. That's where I am.
You should have looked in the trash. But you know what? You a lot of people do not remember that, John, but you are 100% right, because Schottenheimer had that team with discipline going in the right direction. He had proven himself prior to that, And just not to let him, and I'm glad they got rid of George, because you know what George did in Pittsburgh the year before that is when he told that coach there, he called the plays he wanted to call and everything. So Schottenheimer had delivered this team back where they were on the fringe of becoming one of the better teams in the league, and then they let him go, and here we are now, still talking about it.
Yeah, and in my opinion, it set the franchise back 5 to 8 years, in my opinion, because you lost a lot with what Schottenheimer was doing. I can't remember who came in next. I don't know if that was Coach Gibbs or was it Spurrier. I can't remember.
I think it was Spurrier.
I think it was,
it came in, and Spurrier wasn't going to do the same things as Schottenheimer, so you're starting all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll never forgive Spurrier when they played against Jacksonville that year. Jacksonville couldn't stop the run, and what does he come out and do? Pass the ball against the team that couldn't stop the run, and they lost.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go pitch and chuck that ball today, guys. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, the problem with this team for a long time and it has been up until now is that they always went for the shiny object, whether it was players or whatever coach, was like the hot name at the time, or whoever made the best point on TV. I do think with Rivera that the discipline's coming back, and I do think, in a sense, the strategy's coming back, because you look at the end of that game last week. He throws the interception, and I'd say again, in years past, that would have been game over, and they came right back at it with a couple of almost the same plays that worked this time. He just took his time, got the ball downfield, moved the team downfield. That was the most impressive thing to me.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we could sit here and talk about this all day long, Tony, because I love, it's like, for me, it's like sitting underneath a tree in the backyard and listening to somebody tell the stuff like you do. I love it. I'm hating the fact that we got to wrap this thing up and go and call it a day. But I got a question for you, Tony. I got a question. I'm asking for me and Gary. Will you come back on the show again, Tony? Will you come back?
No question. I look forward. I welcome the opportunity, and I tell you what. Now I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Will y'all come on my show?
Hey, I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, you remember you kicked Gary off the show, Tony. Are you going to bring him back on now?
Well, I got to talk to his people, because, he in the Hall of Fame now. He don't talk to me direct anymore. So I got to ask his people if he's going to be on the show next week.
Well, I really have enjoyed this. Tony, thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
all you guys. John, me and you have done this so many times before, man. And we formed a relationship way back when. And, I know the good things that you've been doing out in communities and stuff. And you're a good man, too. And I met the other two gentlemen just today, but I can just feel the love in you guys. And you know what? You guys got a great program. Continue to do what you do. And, the one thing we want to do is we want to put the truth out there, and we want people to know. That's why I'm not going to sugarcoat everything like I used to, making sure we don't make people mad. I'm going to tell it like it is and, let the chips fall where they may. So, yes, I'll be back. And you know what? Those books up on the shelf, I ain't never read one of them. Just pray, man. I got to mess with you. You know what I mean? But, yeah, I enjoyed this. And, guys, keep putting the information out.
Yeah. That's great, man. Hey,
Thank
Gary,
you for
won't you
being
take
on, man? I appreciate the history lesson.
Thank you.
Gary, won't you take us on out of here, man?
All right. Folks, thank you so much for indulging us. Thank you for your support. Tell your friends and family, particularly about this particular show, because I tell you, I'm coming away from this learning more about Tony McGee and about the state of the world than I ever thought that I would. And again, tell your friends, tell your family, please support us. Watch us on Facebook. We'll have a YouTube link out here soon. John Pitt, as always, did a wonderful job picking up that clip. Boy, oh boy, that's like, now you got me rethinking my position on whether that was a good play or not. But I'm gonna stick with it, because officials, of course, it's what was it? It was a judgment call back then. And, that's what you went with. But folks, come back and see us again next week. Hopefully, man, if we could only have Tony on every week, man, it would be a great week. But
absolutely,
you're stuck with me and John, and we'll find something to entertain you with.
Hey, thanks a lot for everything. Everybody out there, have another great week. Be safe, be careful, have fun, and watch a lot of sports. Take care now.
Amen.
Thank you.